Don't put the pressure on. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening, wherever in the world you're watching from. We're here at the distillery in Campbelltown and all pretty excited to get stuck into this 27-year-old Springbank, which is the first release in our Countdown collection, which is obviously what we're here to talk about this evening. So we've got myself, David and Ranald here tonight from the sales and marketing side of things, and we've also got Finlay, our director of production. And Nicole's here as well. She's going to be sending over some questions. So if there's anything you want to ask about the collection, about the whisky, about why we're doing it, fire away and she'll sort of pass on those questions. We'll try to get through them. So I'm sure some of you probably know now a little bit about our Countdown collection. There's been some posts on our social media over the past couple of weeks, which is pretty unusual for us. We don't tend to advertise upcoming releases. But this is something special. It's something we want to shout about and celebrate for such a huge milestone for the distillery. So I think to kick us off, we'll get a bit of an overview of what the Countdown collection actually is, why we're doing it, and a bit about our 200th year anniversary. So Ranald, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, I can do that. Good evening, folks. As Fiona's outlined, you've maybe seen some stuff about the Countdown collection across our social media and stuff. I heard a bit of chat about it, but it's good to get the opportunity to talk a little bit about it in more detail and to hopefully address any questions, any interest that you guys have got in it. But really, at its heart, the Countdown collection is really the beginning of our celebrations of Springbank's 200th anniversary, which we're going to be celebrating throughout 2028, marking 200 years since the distillery was founded, 1828. So it's not an anniversary that, many businesses reach. It's not an anniversary that many distilleries have reached. And it's even less of a milestone that a family-owned business would tend to reach. And so for that reason, we aren't going to let it pass by without making a bit of a fuss about it, because why shouldn't you? Any excuse for a party, any excuse for a good time, and we'll get right in there.
And the celebrations start now, not in 2028.
Absolutely. We were like, how can we drag this out as long as possible? And we thought, let's start bottling some whiskies early to kind of count down, lead up to it, let everybody know it's coming, so that people can get involved, maybe make plans to come and visit the distillery for the anniversary, if not before, and really join us in celebrating what will be a very special occasion. So we came up with the concept of the Countdown collection to really help people get into the spirit and kind of drum up some interest and some knowledge of it. And at its heart, the Countdown collection will be a series of 5 releases between now and 2028. The first release, as you can see, is going to be a 27-year-old. We'll get into the whys, the hows, and how to go about registering your interest at some point during the evening. But there'll be an annual release in this Countdown collection. And each year, the age is going to vary. So it's not always going to be a 27-year-old. It's also not going to be 27 followed by 28, followed by 29, because we don't have the organisational capability to manage something like that. We also don't have the stock profile from the 1990s really to let us do it. But the whiskies, without giving away too many secrets, they're all going to be aged between 25 and 30 years old at the time of their release. So it's older casks, it's special casks. Those of you who've been familiar with Springbank over the years will be aware that back in the 1990s, production at the distillery was really, really sporadic. We weren't producing consistent volumes at all. You might have had some good years, you might have had some really low years of production. So that stock was mainly used to help see the company through the 1990s themselves, the early part of the 2000s, even into the 2010s. So all the stock that's left is very, very piecemeal. There's no one year really where we have massive amounts of stock. And that's why we have such limited quantities of our 21-year-old, our 25 or 30-year-old, because we just don't have the old stock to do more than that. But in amongst those little pockets or parcels of old casks, there are some that really stand out as being top notch. And so that's where we thought we could do something pretty different, pretty unusual with the Countdown collection, was by taking no more than 2 or 3 of those casks at a time to put together these small 500 bottle releases. And we've got, a little bit of variety in that stock profile. We've got some first fill bourbons, first fill sherries, refill bourbon, refill sherry, the odd rum cask, maybe some port casks. So we've been able to kind of play about with those to put together what we feel like is a really, really interesting series of bottlings. As I said, no two are going to be the same age. No two are going to be exactly the same maturation profile. None of them are going to be weird, if I can put it that way. There's not going to be like a PX finish Countdown collection or a red wine cask finished thing. It's all going to be whiskey that has spent the majority of its life in one of either 4 or 5 different cask types. Because I'm sure any of you who are familiar with old Springbank, as in Springbank that spent a long time in cask, the older it gets, the flavours become really, really delicate, really, really subtle. And that typical Springbank style, the brine, the saltiness, the very, very mellow peatiness, is always there in those drams, but it's very, very subtle. And you want to get the balance between the cask influence and the natural character of the whiskey right. So we feel, and this applies to most of the whiskies that we bottle, but if you're using too big a cask still, for want of a better phrase, a cask that's going to dominate the whiskey too much, well, we don't want to lose the typical Springbank character, because in amongst the way we make whiskey, it's the style and the character of Springbank that helps to make it unique. There's not many other whiskies that you can really put in the same kind of ballpark as Springbank in terms of the flavour profile. And certainly as you get to these older ages, you've got to be sure to maintain that balance. So that's why we've generally been quite pleased to find that these old casks are, traditional casks, if you can put it that way. Again, there's maybe a better word for that. But bourbons, sherries, a lot of refills, because to my taste anyway, and we'll see what everyone else thinks, but refill casks of Springbank, by the time they get to this age, for me, work really, really well, because you get that proper balance between wood influence, cask influence, time in the warehouse, and the spirit itself. Just gives you that really kind of perfect balance. So we're not trying to make, weird and wonderful styles of Springbank here. We're putting together 5 whiskies that properly represent what Springbank at this age and quality is all about. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting them out and about and seeing what people are saying about them.
Yeah. Should we see what we think ourselves?
Probably a good idea. Yeah. Too much talking.
I'm thirsty. We've got a couple of questions, and one other thing, I can see that Eric from Barrel to Bottle is watching. Oh. So big shout out to those guys.
Thanks, Eric.
From Barrel to Bottle, they did all those amazing photos that you'll be seeing on our Instagram over the past couple of weeks, and also that video that sort of introduced us tonight. So a lot better than what I could do in my wee iPhone. And we've also had a question about whether there'll be a long row in the lineup. Finlay, do you want to talk a little bit about the whiskies and what's to expect?
Yeah, no problem. So I think, as Ranald's touched upon, we're looking at whiskey between 25 and 30 throughout this release. And when one of your briefs involves tasting casks of that age, it's never too much of a chore. So when this whole idea was first pitched, and the kind of practical side was pitched to me, that we need to get parcels of casks of that age and assess them and start looking at building recipes. That's the kind of stuff that I live for. It's one of my favourite parts of the job is, assessing these older casks, kind of taking stock of their quality, trying to see which ones we think might work well with each other, which ones, are amazing single cast, this kind of stuff. So I think with regards specifically to this whiskey that we're trying just now, we've got a mix of 2 refill sherries and a refill bourbon. And I think, as Ranald touched upon, most of the older stock from the 90s is sitting in refill cask. And anyone who's been the Barley to Bottle tour might have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. When I first joined the company and looked at the older stock, I was initially a little bit like, oh, there's not too much in fresh casks, and thinking that might all sort of be a disappointment or a bad thing. But actually, the more of these refill casks that I've tasted, the more I'm really, really impressed, as Ranald says, with the fact that the Springbank character is there, and it becomes something really refined and quite subtle, and it just becomes a real marriage between the cask and the spirit. And so I think off the bat, the thing to say is most of the casks that we worked with on this were that kind of delicate, subtle Springbank from refill casks. And what that meant is we've been able to make whiskies that I don't think you could boil down to 2 or 3 tasting notes, but you could probably write about 30 or 40 tasting notes, and there'd probably be no immediate flavour, individual flavour that hits you, but they're very refined, and there's a lot going on within them. And so the process of assessing those casks was really, really interesting. I think the thing that I really love about this countdown collection, as Ranald says, is the fact that we've looked at 2 or 3 casks married together. And so I think picking an individual single cask that's good, it's not that difficult. Like, we could all probably have a good stab at it and identify what's a good single cask and what isn't. What becomes slightly more complex, more complicated, is assessing casks and then trying to figure out, okay, which ones of these do we think are going to work well and complement each other? And so we've gone through a lot of trial and error in terms of, okay, like, we really like these 3 casks, and then we've maybe put them together and gone, oh, do you know what, that doesn't highlight the 3 best things about all of them, and we've kind of gone back to the drawing board. So we've been through a lot of iterations of all the releases, and so the interesting part from my side of things has just been that process of selecting them, of pulling them together, of ending up with the whiskies that we've ended up with. And I think we've made them all quite distinct from each other. But I think, as Ranald's touched on, the unifying thing is probably that really nice balance between the Springbank character without the cask becoming the dominant or overpowering component within it.
I think it's quite interesting when we talk about the parcel of casks we're working with as well. You know, we don't have, as we've kind of all said, hundreds of casks to choose from. And actually, I was looking at my notes from when we initially looked at the 1995 casks, and the refill casks were certainly the favourite. It was the fresh sherry casks from that time, which had maybe the more disparaging tasting notes. The old balloon quote, I think, was used there. And it's about working with these sort of very small stocks to put something, sort of creating something that's going to, well, hopefully if people have the chance to taste it, people are impressed with as well. We certainly don't take it for granted that we're putting something into a bottle and people are going to buy and maybe never try. If people are going to try this, we want them to be blown away by it. So there's that sort of expectation to put our best foot forward when we do this type of project. And I'm just tasting this again now, and I think, as we said, it's got all the best bits of old Springbank. It's that old kind of lovely fruitiness, the sort of subtle nuances, and even that brininess towards the end. And so it's definitely got that telltale Springbank character.
Yeah, a little bit of coconut and tropical fruits that are kind of the hallmark of older Springbank from refill casks.
Yeah, I think what's nice about this as well is, as you've said, obviously amazing whiskey, and we're very big on focusing on the whiskey and what's in the bottle, but I think we've got a lot of comments at the moment on how amazing the bottle looks and the packaging, so we were able to, I suppose, go a little bit out with what we normally do with that. And you guys will know more about this than I do, having been here longer, but I think these were sort of inspired by older Springbank labels.
That's right. The old, our labels have taken many iterations over the years, all designed by the same 1 or 2 people, funnily enough, but they've come up with some very, very different ways of doing it over the years. But yeah, these were inspired by the old Springbank Millennium series labels, the 25 to 50 sets, as they're known, where we did a 25-year-old, 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50. And I think it kind of shows you that if something's well done and looks good, it becomes kind of timeless, you know. And these weren't designed for shelf presence. These weren't designed to catch somebody's eye on a bar. These were just designed to look good and to reflect the kind of quality and the age and the tradition that not just the whiskey itself has, but that the distillery and the whole company believes that we possess. You know, it's designed to look like it comes as a quality product from a quality company, and that's nice to hear that people seem to like what we've done with it.
Mm-hmm. And another nice thing about it, you might see in the wee kind of display here that this is an exclusive.
Don't break it.
You will get a little sample with the Countdown collection. So as we've said, it is very much a collectible item. But if you are successful in the ballot and you do get a bottle, you will be able to actually sample it and try it as well. So we're not just teasing you by sitting talking about how amazing this is. You will get to enjoy it yourself as well. And someone's asked, going back to the sort of labels, perhaps in 2028 there'll be a more widely available / affordable edition released for lots of people to have the opportunity to drink and join in with during the 200th year.
100% there will be. Yep, this is the Countdown collection is, as we said, part of the lead up to the celebrations and will form part of the celebrations themselves. But we'll have a number of events and tastings and dinners and all kinds of things happening throughout that year. There will be a worldwide release of a whisky to celebrate the anniversary. I think it's already known amongst some people that back in 2003, our chairman, Hedley Wright, took a small part in a distillation run of local barley, distilled with the intention of being matured for 15 years and released for the 200th anniversary. So that's going to come out. That's going to be worldwide. It's not going to be, I wouldn't have thought, £2,500 a bottle. It's going to be a bit more accessible than that. And we'll be having a Campbeltown Malts Festival in 2028. There'll be anniversary festival bottlings and stuff. So we can acknowledge the price and the value of this bottle and this collection, but there will be plenty more whisky for everyone to get involved with come the year itself. And you never know, we might put something out between now and then as well if we can get some ideas together as a kind of another milestone on the road without it being the full anniversary bottling. But
We can just stand by now for all these ideas to come in.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's probably worthwhile touching upon the price of what is for us a very expensive whisky, a product that's very limited. I think it's also important to say maybe what we're doing with the money that's coming in. We're not just contrary to the rumours going around the bottling hall, we're not all heading off on a big holiday anywhere. But there's certainly some investment coming into or planned for the distillery. Maybe Finlay, you've got a few ideas what we're spending all this on.
So I'm getting the blame, am I?
Yeah, it's all Finlay's fault.
No, I think, for those of you who've been to the distillery in recent years, we've doubled production in 2018 and we've expanded quite sustainably and responsibly. And we've got plans to expand in many areas of the business, not in any way to compromise what we do, just to support what we do and give us the best platform to be able to continue to do it into the future. So the thing that's kind of going to come up first is we're looking to build a bespoke kind of dry goods bottling and dispatch facility, because anyone who's been on site knows that we've kind of got stuff stored everywhere and the bottling hall's based out of an old warehouse. And so we'd love to be able to build something, as I say, bespoke, self-contained, big enough to meet all of our needs and operations. And that obviously comes with a cost. And so, part of the funds from the Countdown collection are going to go towards capital expenditure projects like that are all about reinvesting in the company, reinvesting in what we do, making sure that we continue to do everything 100% on site, just at the scale that's going to help us to meet some of our other plans.
Yeah, if you're an almost 200-year-old company, family owned, we don't have external investors, we don't have big shareholders who want returns on their money or anything like that. So for us, it's about getting the money in that we can then invest for the next 200 years, or at least to set us up for the best part of that as we can. The company has survived some pretty bad times over the years. Thankfully, the more recent times have been pretty healthy. We employ almost 100 people across our group of companies now, which is a hugely significant number in a place like Campbeltown. So if we're able to use the occasion of our 200th anniversary, the availability of some pretty limited whiskies and stuff that isn't going to come back anytime soon, to help fund that investment in the company, be it a new bottling hall, be it plans to put in a malt drum or some form of maltings at Glengyle Distillery for Kilkerran, and eventually, potentially to coincide with our 200th anniversary, potential investment in a new distillery itself to add to Springbank in Glengyle, then I think it's not unreasonable to raise those funds using your top quality stuff. We're not shareholder driven, we're not investor led. This money doesn't disappear into any pockets beyond those of the staff who work here. And if we can use that money to invest in the future of the business, then I have no hang-ups about releasing a £2,500 whisky, even though it's vastly more expensive than anything we've bottled, maybe even ever. Could possibly be effectively upon release the most expensive whisky there's ever been. But I think we're all aware of the secondary market situation with regard to Springbank. We could have released these at £500 a bottle, well, maybe something like that, £800 a bottle, under £1,000 a bottle, and people would still have sort of charged us with it being too expensive and going down the route that other maybe distilleries have been criticised for doing. If we charged £1,000, we'd have got that anyway. But we could have sold that bottle for £1,000. The person who's bought it is then going to sell it for £2,500 or £3,000. And to be blatantly honest, why should that go into a flipper's pocket and not into our business? We're perfectly comfortable with investing in our company and in our people. We're less comfortable with other people making money off our products unjustifiably. It's very difficult to stop, but if we're going to use this for the greater good, then fine. And I also think that for anyone who is concerned that this might be the start of a slippery slope, or here we go, we're turning into another company or another series of distilleries, it's not the case. You can chill out. We're not starting to ramp up the prices of the core range. We're not going to start dropping age statements. We're, again, confident that it's the quality of our product that has seen the distillery through all these years. So we're not going to compromise the quality of the product in pursuit of any profits. Our 10, our 12, 15, 18, Longrow, Hazelburn, Kilkerrans, they're not going away. They're not going to get massively ramped up in price. They're not going to get dropped in age and lowered in quality. They're here to stay at the level they are at, apart from when the UK government slaps a 10.1% duty increase on us. But what can you do? So this isn't the start of a slippery slope or anything like that. It's milestone whisky being released to celebrate a milestone to help support the future of the business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ranald. There's no need to apologise for a whisky at that price, which is going to create and sustain jobs for Campbelltown. We're a rural, isolated community. There's not many employment opportunities outside of your sort of traditional sort of routes. So if we can do what we're doing for the next 200 years, absolutely, why not? And yeah, to reiterate what you're saying, we have we kind of proudly stand by our core range, our flagships, a Springbank 10-year-old, which we are very accessible. And quite interestingly enough, having just come back from a sales tour where I've had importers, distributors, retailers saying we're a bit cheap and they'd quite like us maybe to put our prices up to try and stem demand, but I think we'll do that in our own time. We don't want to lose touch with the people that have been drinking Springbank for generations and might sort of be slightly resentful now of the sort of new wave of Springbank. You won't even maybe say drinkers, but collectors, flippers, whatever. So I think everything we tried to do is trying to sort of stay in touch with our sort of core customer base.
I was wondering if we could have made it through the full live without you mentioning your recent sales or me.
We've heard all about it for long enough, so everyone else might hear about it. Who would have thought a trip to Stirling could be so exciting?
Sure, Fiona's going to start talking about her bungee jumping.
Yeah, I've been biting my tongue this whole time. I think it's worth as well probably just touching on some of the basics about how you can actually get a hold of this bottle. So I think it was mentioned at the start, there's 500 bottles available, and it's a ballot available to the world. Anyone can enter. We want it to be inclusive. We've kind of grown our sort of following a lot, especially over the last couple of years. So we don't want to sort of limit who's able to join in this celebration and potentially get their hands on a bottle. There's obviously some countries that we don't ship to, but even if you are based in one of those countries, and you can find a list of all of them on our website, you can still enter, and we're offering the option to collect your bottle from the distillery shop. And we'll keep your bottle here until it's the end of 2028, the end of the kind of celebrations. You can pick it up any time between sort of being successful in the ballot and then. The ballot goes live on Monday as well, so Monday at midday our time, and it's live for the full week until the Sunday at midday. So there's no rush to enter. Your chances of being successful are the same whether you enter sort of as soon as it goes live on Monday or last minute on Sunday.
Yeah, please don't break the website. On Monday, you've got 6 days.
Let's just stagger it through the week.
Yeah.
And pretty much everything else is all on our website. I think we've been replying to some of the comments, or if there's any confusion through this week, we've been trying to sort of clarify that on our socials, but hopefully everything's clear on there.
And we've got a nice little certificate with the bottle as well, isn't it? Now this is what we're very proud of, Nicole. Designed in-house.
Yeah. So, no.
I was just going to think it's quite important to say that when you do manage to get a bottle, if you manage to get a bottle, you'll have a certificate which will have your name hand drawn on it. It's not going through a printer or anything. Somebody's with the, I think, the neatest handwriting we can find in the company is handwriting all 500 certificates. So please make sure you spell your name correctly when you do your ballot, and obviously don't use any fictitious names or anything like that.
No attempts at humour, because
they won't be accepted.
It won't be funny. You might think it won't.
So part of the reason behind having this certificate is at the end of the countdown collection, when we've released all 5 whiskies, if anyone's been sort of lucky enough to collect the full countdown collection, you'll have your certificate with your name so we can sort of prove authenticity. And we're planning to do some sort of prizes, basically distillery experiences, and I'm keeping that pretty vague. But you'll be invited to join us in the celebrations and given some sort of access to something pretty exciting at the distillery.
I think we were talking about that earlier, quite keen for the experience to be here in Campbelltown rather than us sort of sending it out. We always like to encourage people to come and visit us. Mm-hmm. So as you say, the experience might be a place in one of our kind of tour packages, or maybe even Whisky School. We're a queue jump on the Whisky School. I think currently at a 7-year waiting list or something like that just now. So the prizes will be worthwhile. So yeah, make sure you keep all your certificate. And
Springbank tea towel.
Yeah. See, Finlay, you've finished your first dram. You're looking for a wee top up.
No, I'm all right.
No, you're torturing people.
And also, just to note on that, when talking about the certificates, usually when we do things like this, if you have to apply your name to a bottle in the distillery shop, for example, it's always got to be your own name. We're quite strict, but this time it's a bit more flexible. If you're getting it as a gift for someone or something like that, you can put their name, but just make sure to include that when you're doing your ballot entry, and it will all be clear when you're going through the process.
Fair changes once it's been in the glass for a while, doesn't it? Really opens up, but nice kind of.
I find it quite sweet and honeyed now in the nose, especially.
Yeah, it was probably a little bit spicier to start, and then it's really opened up from there.
Will people be able to try this in the washback bar?
The plan is to have a bottle in the washback bar. Price per dram to be confirmed. We'll speak to David, our bar manager, about that. But yeah, I think it makes sense to have something on site, and then maybe one day have a whole flight set up. Be the thing to do if we're organised enough to keep a couple of bottles back.
I think we'll get a couple of the samples from when we blended it, because there'll be the 500 bottles that are made available, and then
yeah,
501 bottles because we probably aren't going to pay for that one. And then a couple of other samples like that to
Yeah.
do the odd tasting with maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Is this one going to go missing at the end of tonight?
Well, if it does, we'll know who's just mixing it. So. It's a cracker.
More questions coming in.
Nicole is typing.
I can say, I've got my pickup from the Golden Ocean at 8:15.
I think we've covered all of them so far.
Happy days.
Yeah. Nicole doesn't look too angry, so hopefully this is a nice message coming over.
Basically, actually, no point is there. If anyone's, they're looking at if they want to buy together, like, can people split the cost and enter the ballot?
They can, but we can only accept individual entries to the ballot. Now, obviously, if a club, a group, a bunch of friends want to get together to do that, we need one point of contact for the ballot purposes, for recording the sale, for knowing where to send it to, because it's a fairly automated process, the ballot, and that once it's underway, it's the ballot itself is computerized, it's done out of our hands. So if there's a group or a club or whoever, plus if you all enter, that probably increases your chances of winning. But yeah, at the point of entering the ballot, I think you'd have the opportunity to state it's for a club, as in Rand Watson enters the ballot, but wants the name on the label to be the Springbank Stallions, for example. And that way we'll figure out what your plan is.
And another ballots question: if you win the first ballot, are you guaranteed success in the future ballots? Unfortunately not, is the short answer to that one.
It's a clean start for every release, unfortunately.
And will it be
Or
around the same
unfortunately.
time each year?
That's the plan.
That is the plan at this stage, yeah.
March every year.
Yeah. I think if you almost guaranteed the full set instead of doing it year by year, you'd really just be doing one ballot and there'd be 500 winners and that would be it. We appreciate people might like to get the full set and we can understand why, but also there might be some people who would just like the chance to get a bottle once. And if you basically shut that down on day one of the first release, then it stops being interesting to everyone else. You've got 500 interested people, you're not kind of sharing the joy over a 5-year period really. So that's why on balance we think it's better to open it up every year to everybody.
I think that's all the questions just now.
Good stuff. Well, it's a good start to the series, guys, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Good start to the weekend as well.
You've not got some marathon training to be doing.
I do, that's why it's just the one drive. Okay, well, if we are up to date, then we are good to go.
Okay,
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
best of luck next week.